What's up, guys? It's Gilberto Torres Jr. with Torres Boxing, and we're some days removed now from the super fight between Saul Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Triple G Golovkin, which happened this past Saturday, September 15th at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. Before I get into the fight, make sure you go ahead and follow this YouTube channel by subscribing and hitting the bell icon to receive up-to-date notifications on all content. Visit torresboxing.com and subscribe there, and also follow us on Instagram at torresboxing. But guys, without further ado, the super fight finally took place this past Saturday, and I have to admit, all controversy aside, all argument and debating aside, that this fight was a very competitive matchup between the two best middleweights in boxing today. The fight was a great fight by all accounts. It was back and forth, and it was just exciting to watch. It was definitely a fight that lived up to its expectation and went the distance this time around again. Both fighters demonstrated that they're world class, and I'll definitely obviously get more into this and the details, but Saul Canelo Alvarez, for all the controversy with the PEDs and the clenbuterol, had presented up to more than 20 urine tests to VADA, the Voluntary Anti-Doping Agency, overseeing the testing for this fight. He came into this fight clean. Gennady Golovkin, of course, came into the fight clean, being tested as well. So this was, competitively, as far as the fighters go, this was a fair fight inside of that ring. They were going at it, exchanging blows, and I was surprised at some point the image that we saw where you had Saul Canelo Alvarez backing up Golovkin. Golovkin was on his back foot for several parts of the fight. He was on his back foot. He was boxing, and Alvarez was actually the aggressor, which was actually a rare image to see, because usually we're so accustomed to seeing Golovkin, the killer, the boogeyman of the middleweight division, cutting off the ring and attacking his opponents and just overwhelming them into submission. But this time around, it was Alvarez that was doing the hunting, and I don't know how much of that had to do with the goading from Team Golovkin, Abel Sanchez's trainer. Even Golovkin at points calling Alvarez out for not fighting a Mexican-style fight the first time around. They accused him of running. They said that he didn't fight like a man, that he just ran and got on his bicycle in that fight. And so Alvarez definitely demonstrated another aspect of his game and actually went toe-to-toe with the heavy-hitting puncher Gennady Golovkin. Golovkin didn't fight a bad fight. In my opinion, he showed another aspect of his game. A lot of people forget that here's a guy who had a decorated amateur background, having won more than 400 fights, or close to 400. I want to say it's about 390 something, if I'm not mistaken. But he has an amateur pedigree. He has a silver medal in the Olympics. So this is a guy that's definitely can box. And, for all those people that think that Gennady's a one-dimension fighter, that all he can do is go in and take punches and, just has no real skill or technical side to him, I think he proved them wrong in this fight. I think he showed also that at 36 years of age, he can change. He can make adjustments in a fight. In the end, it was Canelo Alvarez that picked up the win. It was a majority decision. And remember that the judges and the referee were carefully selected for this fight due to the controversy that we saw in the first fight. And so these are the official scores. You had Glenn Feldman, which had it a draw, 114-114. You had Dave Moretti and Steve Weisfeld, who had a 115-113, both in favor for Alvarez, which gave him the majority decision win. So, did Alvarez really win that fight? In my personal opinion, no. I thought Golovkin did just a bit more to edge out the victory. And remember watching the fight and telling my brother that that Gennady was going to pick up the split decision. That's how close of a fight I also admit it was. that, but I thought Golovkin was going to pick up the split decision. So I'm not saying it wasn't a competitive fight, that it was a complete blowout by Golovkin. I thought it was competitive, but I did see him edge out the win. You also have some, this is something that Golovkin's promoter, Tom Loeffler, shared in respect to the media that was ringside to watch this fight. And many of them, the majority of them, thought that Golovkin won it as well. And I'm just going to go down it. I'm not going to mention all of these, but I'll give you some scores from the media in which, just to kind of give you insight as to what the people actually watching the fight in person saw. So you had Harold Letterman of HBO, who had it 116-112 in favor of Golovkin. Brian Campbell of CBS Sports, 116-112 for Golovkin. Dan Rayfield of ESPN had it a draw, 114-114. Stephen A. Smith, Golovkin win. Arash Markazi of ESPN, 114-114 draw, along with Brett Okamoto of ESPN, who had it a draw as well. Teddy Atlas had it a win. Salvador Rodriguez had it a draw. And you just go down the list here of people that... there's also a couple that thought the Canelo won. But all in all, out of these... let me see how many people had gave their scores. Out of 59... scores given by the media, 40 were in favor of Golovkin, only 2 for Canelo, and 17 had it a draw. So that just comes to show that many people saw Golovkin winning. These scores were tight as well. 115-114 I'm seeing, 115-113, 116-112 seems to be the widest score. But some of these scores are obviously alluding that it was a very close fight, but the majority had it for Golovkin. So that's just some insight into what the people saw there. But Gennady drops to 38-1-1. He suffers his first defeat as a professional. Didn't break Bernard Hopkins' middleweight defense record. Both of them are not tied for the historical record of 20 middleweight title defenses. His 8-year streak as champion, his reign has come to an end. And Canelo now essentially becomes the man at middleweight. He picks up middleweight titles. He picks up the win, becomes the man at the top of the helm, and but the only logical step now for me personally seems to be the trilogy. And I know that that was the plan all along. You had Oscar de la Hoya of Golden Boy say that these fighters had the ability, there was the potential in this fight to squeeze out 3 fights, that this very well could have been a trilogy, and it looks like that's exactly what we're going to be getting, a trilogy. If that trilogy will be seen anytime soon, I think that depends more so on Canelo and Golden Boy. Coming into this promotion, they're the bigger star. Canelo has proven to be a pay-per-view draw in the past. With all that favoring him, he's got more reason to justify not fighting Golovkin right away. But I do think that May 5th of next year, Cinco de Mayo weekend, is the perfect date for this trilogy. And I think the fight itself, the rivalry, demands a trilogy. And for it to be done as soon as possible, to bring closure to this chapter, to put a definitive end on this chapter between these two fighters, Alvarez and Golovkin. I think it's necessary for the sport of boxing. Fans, everyone wants to see the trilogy. Everyone just wants to kind of get this out of the way. It's proven to be a box office draw. The first time around, it did 1.3 million pay-per-view buys. This time around, it'll probably do a little bit more. So they're not going to get those type of numbers with anyone else. And I think it's time to strike while the iron is hot. Golovkin, of course, is not getting any younger. He's 36. He'll be 37 by the time the next fight takes place. So I think it's time. I think there's no reason for them to push out this fight to a later date. I think that the time to strike is now, and so I would hope to see the trilogy, the third fight, take place in May. Alvarez said that supposedly he wants to fight again in December. Will that happen? I'm not so sure, just because he suffered a pretty bad cut over his left eye. Usually cuts take several months to heal up, and that scar tissue could be fresh and be susceptible to more tearing if he fights quickly again. So that has a question mark. But if he does fight in December, and Golovkin, the same story with him, he also suffered some bad cuts in the fight. If they were somehow to negotiate fights for a December date, which I think it's unlikely, at least to see both of them fighting on December. There's many great fights to be made that are already going to happen to close out 2018. So who knows? They may not want to overburden the boxing fan and bring out another pay-per-view event. They could very well have it on HBO regular, primetime viewing, which could also be an option, a treat to fans, so to speak. But who knows? If Canelo fights, he could fight David Lemieux, who picked up a spectacular knockout victory over Spike O'Sullivan this past Saturday on the undercard. So that's probably the most logical opponent in between fight for Alvarez. Golovkin, on the other hand, it's hard to see who he could fight in the interim. But I would hope that in May of 2019 we see the trilogy. So we'll see how that plays out. I think in the next month or two we should start getting some news out of both camps as to what the future holds for these two fighters and the chapter that they share in boxing history. There's some people out there that are saying that Golovkin is done. I know I've heard some people, Torres Boxing, the Instagram, on the post there, that say some people are saying that Golovkin was robbed. Others are saying that Golovkin should retire. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think Golovkin should retire. I don't think there's really no real reason for him to retire. He fought a very competitive fight. It's not like he was, steamrolled, like he was a punching bag. He didn't show signs that he's a shot fighter, that he's completely done. He didn't show any of that. It was a very close fight. On paper, if he had one or two more rounds, it would have been a draw or a victory in his favor. So he's fighting a great fighter in Canelo as well. So these are two of the best fighters in the world. The best fighting the best is what boxing fans want. It's not a one-sided fight. It's actually a very competitive affair. So there's no reason for Gennady Golovkin to retire at this point. He very well could take on that trilogy fight, and who knows, maybe fight a few more times after that. Is Golovkin the same fighter that he was 3-5 years ago? Maybe not, because age, I think, is starting to become a slight factor in his career. But he's still an elite fighter. He's still game. He still has a steel chin. Still showed a different side of his game. If he decides to box, the problem here was that he tried to box at times in what appears to be the wrong fight to box in, to fight in that style. I think had it been any other fight, had it been maybe in another city, or fighting a different superstar, I think he could have fought that way and won convincingly. But this type of fight demanded that he go for a knockout. That if he wanted to really get a win, he had to go for the knockout. It's almost reminiscent of the Manny Pacquiao Juan Manuel Marquez fights, in which the first fight ended in a draw. The next two ended in controversial fashion, and those times they fought under the same circumstances. You could say, Manny Pacquiao, the superstar of boxing, where they were fighting in under conditions that he would be favored in if it was a competitive fight, and he got the nod on those two fights. And I know there's people that say that Marquez won those other two fights, but the fourth fight was the fight in which Marquez said, you know what, I need to get a decisive win because the judges are not going to give it to me. And what did we get in the sixth round? We got the knockout of the year, in which he knocked out Pacquiao and just left an image to behold. The #1 pound-for-pound fighter of the moment had been knocked out cold by Marquez, who came in there looking for the knockout, bulked up in hopes of securing that knockout and having more strength added to him. And so I think that's a little bit reminiscent of that with Gennady Golovkin, that in which he needs to understand that he needs a knockout, that he cannot leave it in the judges' hands. He's not going to be favored, especially when these fights are so competitive. And so I would have liked to have seen Golovkin go for broke in this fight. I would have liked to have seen him, if the fight already had gone 9-10 rounds, then those last few rounds he should have gone for broke and tried to really secure that knockout. It didn't go that way, and I don't know if there was a false sense of security in him knowing that their team had approved the judges for this fight, that maybe he said that, oh, you know what, we're down to the last few rounds. I feel that I've really given it my all, that I edged out the victory, and that he thought in the back of his mind that the judges were going to favor him. I don't know if that was a false sense of security that he had or not. I don't know if that's the case, but I feel like Golovkin should have just gone all out and looked for that knockout, because it's very hard for him, any fighter in his position, under these circumstances, to get the nod from the judges at ringside. But Golovkin is not done, and again, props to Canelo Alvarez for picking up the win. I thought he fought a great fight, and the fact that he stood toe to toe with Golovkin, I think merits respect. Golovkin is a machine. Golovkin has been feared by many in the middleweight division, avoided by many, and he had at some point 23 consecutive knockouts. So this guy definitely packs a punch. So Canelo standing there and trading with him just shows that he's also a game fighter. So props to Canelo for picking up the win. I think his performance alone just proved kind of got him a little bit of credibility after the controversy with the PEDs, and also with the first fight being seen as a gift to him, to save him from having another loss on his record. That fight obviously was upsetting and frustrating to listen to the scorecards, but this fight was competitive. I had, again, Golovkin winning by split decision. The fight was close, leaves room for debate. So why not do a third fight? And I hope we see that sooner rather than later. But guys, I'm out. Make sure you go ahead and follow TorresBoxing.com and follow the Instagram at TorresBoxing. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to receive up-to-date notifications. Like and comment your thoughts below. Let me know what you guys think. How did you see each fighter fighting? Did you enjoy the fight? Do you want to see a trilogy? How does the trilogy play out? Let me know in the comment section, guys. And until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day. God bless you. Have a great one. And I'm out.